of today, we shared that this was going to be a 3-course meal. We've gone through the first course, the second course, and now we're here for the topping. I'm a dessert person, so I'm really, really excited because this is the sweetest part of the conference today. It's our last segment, which is a panel of men, yes, as they take on women's issues. They're excited, you're excited. For brothers who have sneaked into the room to say, yes, I told you so, it's okay. Join us for this final part as we come down the home stretch of what has been a phenomenal day in the lives of everyone who has been a part of this. I'll turn you over very quickly to Mrs. Remy Ebrehi and Mrs. Shemun Fagade as they take us through the men's panel. God bless you all.
Good afternoon, everybody. You're welcome to the third session of the Be Women Conference 2020. Today, this afternoon, we're going to be talking with 4 distinguished gentlemen, and I'm going to introduce them briefly, and they'll come up on stage. They'll come up on stage as I introduce them. Our first panelist is Mr. Tunde Emmanuel. He's a businessman with over 35 years cognate experience. He's the pioneer non-executive director at Prima Garnet Advertising. He's also the promoter and vice chairman of Prudential Union Assurance Company Limited. He's an ordained minister and serves as an elder and family wellness mentor in the Redeemed Christian Church of God. He has been married to his jewel, Abimbola, for 35 years, and they have 4 amazing children. You're welcome, sir. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Our second panelist is Mr. Harold Obasoa. He's a seasoned petroleum geologist, a technocrat, and corporate administrator. He has over 29 years' experience in upstream exploration and production experience in the oil and gas sector. He doubles as the Group Chief Operating Officer of Levine Energy Group, as well as the Managing Director of its wholly owned upstream subsidiary, Levine Hydrocarbon Limited. Harold heads the Married Men's Fellowship of the Covenant Nation. He is happily married to Valerie for 23 years, and they are blessed with 3 children. You're welcome, sir. Thank you. Our third panelist this afternoon is Mr. David Ashiru, who is a C-suite consultant with over 20 years of professional experience in various industries spanning retail, information technology, government, managed consulting, and real estate development. He has been happily married, or he is happily married, to Omowale for 17 years, and they are blessed with 2 sons. You're welcome, sir. Thank you very much for joining us. Our third and final panelist is Mr. Akin Oludimila, who is a certified project management expert with industry experience across FMCG, banking, and construction. He's happily married to Funmi, and they have 2 amazing girls. You're welcome. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
So I'd like Sean to start with the first question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. My first question will be to Mr. Harold. Right. Women have been pushing the envelope in the workplace for years and have made great strides. A woman can be anything from the MD of a company, CEO, to a director in a large multinational. Now, there are, however, still challenges with overcoming the existing biases, right? From existing male-dominated leadership that is largely prevalent. From a male perspective, how best can women address head-on these challenges?
Thank you very much. You must mean, I need to understand it again. You said the challenge of men accepting the women, or, okay.
So, male domination,
okay.
Right? And then now, women, the role of women is evolving, right?
Yes.
And then women are now taking on roles in big corporations and all that. Now, how best are men prepared for this change, and how best do they...
Okay, interesting. There's something about marriage that I say, no matter how much you theorize, until you're in it, marriage is practical. There's no, you can postulate and think as much as you can, but when you get into it, it's a different ballgame. And I like to use examples, some personal, and others from other people that I would have said I've heard from or learned from. Personally, for me, I've always been fully supportive of my wife. I've been married for over 23 years now, and I think just like the theme of the program, evolving. The truth is, it's evolving. I mean, you can't. When I was growing up, even in school, at that time, it's not because the men were not always the most intelligent in class. So if you stretch that, then why not women being MDs and CEOs? Now, the truth is, whether we like it or not, culture has a very strong role to play. But even in our everyday lives, we're beginning to see that it's evolving. For example, I mean, I for the establishment I work for now, we do quite a bit. And the two major projects that we're doing in my company today, major projects, handled by women. So what I would say is culture has a role to play, but upbringing too has another role to play. The truth is, you would always feel a bit threatened. Even I, as exposed as I was, I felt a bit threatened, and I'll tell you what happened in let me just give a quick brief. I got married fairly early, and I had about 3 degrees, so I felt, and my wife had only 1. But, sometimes circumstances play out in ways that you don't expect. I lost my job almost immediately after we got married, and, just the same culture thing, my wife just felt that, she had only 1 degree, I had 3, so I should try and get a job. But everything I tried, I couldn't. I just couldn't for about a year and a half. But my wife got the job, and I supported her. And the truth is, for the time she was in that company, her rise was phenomenal. And I realized that, look, by the time you understand that, by the time a man understands that the success of his wife is also his, then, you start to evolve, slowly. Because how would it's like saying that you as a man, you want to be the only one that provides, but what happens if you can't? There's something about practical living that you cannot maybe make it magical, because what happens if your wife just has a better job? And on a daily basis, we see it evolving every day, that women, and I hope let me be careful so that I don't sound too controversial now, but there are a lot of skill sets that women have innately that men don't have. That's the truth. The sayings, things like, train a woman and you're training a whole generation, train a man and training him. It's not a lie. Women are better at multitasking. I saw my wife when we started, and she was juggling so many things together. And something else I said I was going to mention here, irrespective of the question that I'm asked, is, people say things like, I think culturally, we tend to think that women are maybe less in everybody. Do you know what? If you go to Proverbs 31 from 10, just read all the way down to the end, it's clear. In fact, there is no place in the Bible that talks about a man like that. Just go to Proverbs 31, 10 to 31. Just read it. And I think sometimes it's also misplaced. Not misplaced. Maybe the first thing I would say is that maybe there's a lack of understanding. Half of the time you think you know things and you don't. How many of us really take time? Only very few Christians even study the Bible anyway. So you tend to accept what people say, But sometimes, why don't you go and read it yourself? Funny enough, you might get a different interpretation, And I personally, I've said this many years, even when I used to joke about it, I say that I have a very healthy fear and respect for women. That's the truth. They're stronger. Women have a much higher threshold for pain in the first place. I feel that let me not be controversial, but the truth is, women are stronger. That's where I see it. Even if you go to the animal kingdom, I'm just saying this because I think sometimes we men, a lot of the men, don't understand things. If you read Proverbs, you won't feel threatened. That's, what is the purpose? If you understand the purpose of a thing, you get a bit more relaxed. Just read Proverbs. Trust me. I even read it again a few days ago, and I was amazed. Everything that is written there, if that is who a woman is, then really, 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 there's no reason why women cannot be CEOs or whatever it is. It's over time, I think they're actually better administrators because of what they've had to do at home anyway. So I don't know if that's answered. Okay.
Amazing.
Okay,
Amazing.
Thank you.
You've spoken to how a man's disposition to that. Mr. David, a woman has a boss or a spouse who is traditional in that thinking, and she has to see him or every day or work with him. How can she how should she address this challenge if she has a boss or a husband who is traditional, and her roles have evolved and she's living life to the fullest? What ways can she deal with this challenge?
Thank you very much for that. One of the things I'll say about traditional people is what they are aware of, what they grew up with, what the experiences they had have been. So if a woman happens to have a husband or a boss that is more traditional in his outlook and probably feels that as a woman you shouldn't get to this level, and that one of the key advices I will give to them is be humble. Not to seek less. Are you with me? But change or use your attitude to kind of get them over. Scripturally, you will hear where it talks about a woman not using the outward facade of things, but rather having a gentle and a humble spirit within them. Being humble has nothing to do with how you can rise or how far you can rise or how successful you can be. You permit them at their level of understanding. You don't make it your duty to correct what they know or don't know, or don't you know that this is what is happening now? Because more likely than not, you get them more entrenched in that this is why we said you shouldn't be this. But if you, with a gentle spirit, would just evolving and showing yourself being able to do as much or much more that they can do without stressing it, over time, most of the time, you will see that you chip into whatever their belief system is till they have to actually acknowledge that, you know what, I was wrong about you. In fact, you deserve this. They oftentimes may now become those that will rightly push you through the glass ceiling. But oftentimes what you see, unfortunately, is that, especially with the feminist culture, is that, no, you can't push me down, you can't hold me down, you can't do this. And rather than a man see that, he actually just says, okay, I will show you that I can do it because that's how I was made to believe while I was growing up. Well, if you, again, gentle spirit, maybe I shouldn't use the word humility so that people don't start thinking you're thinking of talking about being subservient. No. You should be confident in yourself as a woman. You should go for that goal. You should go for that position. You should go giving the best. But don't always flaunt it like, look, what a man can do, I can always do better. I can always do this. Because over time, if you take that posture, you would have more men, traditional or not, against you. Because men can be naturally feel threatened. So for me, have a good spirit. Smiles, like my wife would always say, would win you anything. She says something very funny. She says, if I'm smiling and I'm telling somebody, you're so stupid, they'll start laughing with you. So in you going there, getting there, just have a good spirit about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. David.
Thank you for that, Mr. David. Sir, Mr. Emmanuel, following up from what Mr. David is saying, should men be threatened because these days we have a lot of agitation about gender equality, and even in the home front, a lot of women feel that they are equal partners with their husband. So, sir, I'd like to know, should they feel threatened by this philosophy and attitude?
I am not threatened by the success of my wife. And I truly believe that man should not be threatened. Harold was saying something about a man who's sure of himself. If you know who you are, haven't gone through solid upbringing as a man, it's very difficult for you to turn around and be a woman hater. At the point at which you should celebrate your woman, and you both will enjoy the fruit of her labor and your labor. Then there's something else that I think there's a leg to the first question that she did ask about women. Correct me if I'm wrong, Michelle. About women, what can women do? Not necessarily in dealing with traditional men, but in getting to that position of power. Am I correct? That was a leg to that question in that?
Yes.
All right. Now, I find out that a lot of women would have the necessary preparations for whatever they are called to do in business. But the social dynamics, they may not have. The power play, they may not have a good handle on it. All right? And let me tell you how I did with my own children when they were growing up. The moment my daughter got out of school, I had 2 books on power. I gave her one to read. The second one was a book written by an advertising company owner in New York that detailed what she had to go through to get to be number 1 in her company and then one of the most respected advertising executives in New York. Those books said things about the dynamics of rise in the corporate environment. These things, they don't teach you at Harvard Business School. You attain them by observation, read about them, or you experience them. In reading about them, profiles and all that, you can attain that. But when you experience, then that's when the skills deployed from your reading will serve you well in getting to that position. Now, in terms of, now back to the question you did ask me about feeling threatened. I think, I'm sorry to say this, but because this is my own philosophy. I think it's actually a weak man who feels threatened by a successful woman. That's my core belief. Now, dealing with that, what do? Humility, all right? So you don't turn the house upside down if it's a home. Humility, respect. Look, like some of the things that I tell people, we lose a lot of power by absorbing some of these cultural traits of the white man. There are beautiful things that they have done that we can appropriate. Nevertheless, our own culture is something that we must not jettison for the purposes of being with the Joneses. What do I mean? I don't think I'm a traditionalist, yet I stress prostrating and kneeling. That's the truth of the matter. I stress it. So if you want to come across to me as a woman, or even as a non-Yoruba person, if you kneel down for me, the door is open wide. If you prostrate, my heart goes out to you. Now, but there is something psychological that happens with that. It breeds humility. It breeds humility. Because the fact that you are bending out to say, hello, sir, hello, ma, whatever, to the person that you are greeting, there is so much humility that you don't know that you are building up in yourself. And I think that is the civility of the Yoruba group in Nigeria. I do know, for example, that, I expect that other ethnic groups will have their respect indicators. So the moment you use your respect indicators to deal with situations, you get good answers.
Thank you, sir. But as a rider to what you're saying, you can kneel down and prostrate at home, but in an office setting, it's totally out of place for you to do that. So how would somebody navigate this kind of issue in the office?
That's what I was talking about. The humility that those attributes breed in you will automatically transfer to even the words that you speak. All right? It's some kind of psychological operation. Chemistry will probably explain it better. I don't know. But it's a psychological operation that the moment you have released yourself to respect somebody senior or your fellow man, it goes along the line. It goes along the line. We have, for example, look, there's something that happens about us. Existentialism is a philosophical doctrine that stresses the I and the me. And that has been the bane of marriages, society, and all whatnot. Because if you are an existentialist, there's so much I in you, there's so much me in you. Yet, it can only get you so far. As a Christian, as a believer, we are trained to be communalist. So when you have the discordance between existentialism and communalism, things happen. In the office, we are talking about the office now. In the office, if you are naturally disposed towards respect for others, the whole ball game is actually in your control. So many things happen. Oh, I think I'm going in a different direction now. But the reality is that humility in you, bred by these traditional attributes, leads you to handle men in authority, men in power. And if you access the power, then you can control. Pirelli says, power without control is nothing. All right? So if you have power, then you can control. Your respect will give you access to the power. And with that power, you can turn things around to suit your purpose. And that's what control is all about.
Okay, so when you were, because now you said that you noticed what a woman lacks, which is why you gave your daughter...
I didn't hear that, please.
You just, before, when you were talking earlier, you were saying that when your daughter graduated, you gave her 2 books to read about power. So what other things did you consciously do to bring out leadership qualities in her? And what were the leadership qualities in her that you were targeting?
I discovered quite early that my daughter was quite verbal. And as a humanist, I began to think of the direction to give to her life. We sat together to talk a lot. Our family enjoys that. We talk a lot in the family. So that was something we did to bond. And in the bonding, numerous ideas will always come forth. And they were able to develop their own individuality. Once you know who you are as a person, and you are able to give expression to those thoughts and ideas, your leadership attributes will emerge. Did I answer your question?
No, sir. What I'm trying to find out is, from a man's perspective, what are the leadership qualities you would want a woman to hone in on in order to excel both at home and in the corporate environment?
Focus. Focus. A woman should be focused. And we find them that good, successful women have focus. And I think multitasking, as Harold said, or David, multitasking is a virtue that every woman must have. I believe that the worst multitasking woman will pulverize the best man. So these are attributes that I would believe that my daughter, that I try to build into my children, really, all of them, male and female, to be confident of who they are. Don't lose focus. Build the ability to read and focus. And we didn't dissipate time trying to get involved with entertainment. That's the truth of the matter. We didn't have TV. A conscious decision. If you thought, what did I do? I did that. I took TV out of the thinking of my children. So they were able to do nothing but read and express themselves.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. So we have we have been told what a woman who is in a leadership position, what her attributes should be, and what the man's disposition should be. And before we move on along from there, and I'm going to leave this question open, meaning anybody can answer, but please let's put our mics so that we can others can hear. This question was sent in. My husband has been very supportive of my career, as we're both career people. Recently, an opening came up for me in a very senior position that will really take our lives to another level of comfort. My husband, surprisingly, is not in support. He says the distance may cause some tension, which I feel are just cover-ups for his actual issues. How can I handle this? It's your question. Anyone?
I don't. Maybe should I bite the bullet, or somebody else wants to? I'm sure this is going to be a tag team. It's going to be. There's more than one perspective to this. But first thing I would say is, we've done a bit of counseling in the last couple of years, and the one thing is that statement is not enough for us to give a very clear answer, because I would like to understand what the background is. Now, if I'm to take this on face value from what she's saying that she suspects, there's a lot in that statement that she made, that she said that hasn't come out yet. What has happened before now? Is it that he has always been the higher earner, and maybe she's going to earn more now? Or when she says change their lives, you need to explain, is she going to move out of town? Do they have to move somewhere else? There's a lot to it, but the truth is, I'll put myself, let me see if I can clone what is going on, just from my own perspective now. As I said, whatever we say here is not going to be total, because we really don't know the full picture, But for me, personally, I had always, when we got married, my wife wasn't even working. She had just come out of youth corps, so I was the only one, And it got to a stage where I remember the first time she was going to get a much higher paying job. In fact, the truth is I was actually without work. I had tried everything, And of course, I felt a bit less of a man initially, but I looked at it that I know there's something that is usually unsaid here, If you are the first person, whether the husband or the wife, you are the first person to earn much more, you actually are in a very good position to decide the future of your home. Because if you lord it over, it's going to happen again. But if it's properly done, and then both of you have that understanding that, look, whatever comes in is for both of us, then whoever earns more, you should be happy. But by the time you already there's a statement that was said, there's a line that tells me that something is not very clear. But the truth is, in my own case, for maybe about 8 years of our marriage, my wife was earning at least 5 times what I was, at least 5 times. And it was a bit of a struggle then, but there's one thing she kept telling me, that, look, she looked at it that even when she wasn't working, there was an understanding that I passed across to her that, look, I'm the one working today, but yes, whatever is coming in is for both of us. So she already had that understanding going forward, so it was much easier for her. One thing is here, what I would say is, from personal experience and blah, 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 is that women are very much more reactive. So what you give her, she's going to give you back in tenfold. So I don't know what has happened before now, but what I would say is, if I'm the guy, we'd sit down and talk about it a lot. We need to understand what are the near and far-term effects. Depending on how the home is at this point in time, how old are the children? If she's going, because I know a friend of mine who, his wife was given a job in a neighboring West African country. And he was all for it. The children had grown up a bit, they were in boarding school, so it was okay. I mean, he didn't have to, his wife didn't have to be there on a continuous basis. When they're on holidays, they are together. So she needs to give us a bit more information, but I would support it. Looking at it literally, I would, but I still need a bit of background for that. Maybe somebody else can add a perspective to it.
Thank you very much, Harold.
Mr. David, before you answer the question, please, I want you to consider, I want to add an addendum. And my addendum is this. Now, the Bible is very clear that men are the heads of the home. There's no question about that. But does it really matter who is earning the income? I think that's the addendum I want to add.
I'm sorry.
As in who is, or should I say who is the major breadwinner? Does it really matter whether it is the man or the woman? Because it's quite challenging for both single ladies who are maybe earning very well and they meet a guy who is not earning as much as them. That is on the one hand. Married women too. A lot of ladies, when they marry, they're high flyers, they're doing fine, well in their careers. They get to a stage, maybe they're earning more than their husbands, and there's suddenly an issue. So does it really matter who is bringing home the most bacon? Let me put it like that.
Very good question.
So I want you
I'll
to
take
add
addendum
that.
second. With the first question, Shaun, two things strike me. She said he had always been supportive, but this particular role, there's a question, and its key issue is that the distance. It's easy to look at that question and think, oh, he's against my rise. He doesn't like the fact that I'm taking this and this is going to be better for the family. As she considered that the challenge he's saying is that this distance would affect me as the guy. But didn't it be wood, or how did they say it? So, like Harold said, there's a lot more context that needs to be provided. Because if a man has always been supportive of his wife, he won't just wake up all of a sudden and say, I'm not doing this anymore. Are there flaws or mistakes that she has made in this rise of hers that they've not really communicated or discussed and figured out, okay, with this happening, this is how we need to do it? What stage? Harold said something. How old are the children? Are you with me? Because if the children are older, maybe they're in boarding house, then okay, fine, we'll jollof around. We keep telling our children that, look, at this level you go, me and my wife, your mother I married though, it's something that needs to be unpacked a bit more. Going to the other question, that's, I almost feel you picked me for that question. So when I got married, and I tell this story every time, either in premarital counsel, anywhere I have the opportunity to say that, look, when I met my wife, I basically wasn't working professionally. I had my own business and stuff like that. She had a career. She was doing all that. But let me go straight to the issue of money. So I often tell people that when we got married, almost 17 years ago now, she had always earned, on a monthly basis, high 6 digits. And I think just before we got married, I went into government. And they were paying me 50,000 naira. Now, coming from a place where I was doing my things and earning millions and then being paid 50,000 naira, but what struck me is that without asking her, without having a conversation, she just said, oh, okay, which account does my salary go into now? I said, but you need to do something. She said, well, I'll probably just take this amount for myself in a month and then just put the rest in there. Not a demand made by me. A decision made by her. So what that did is, whether I was earning just 50,000 naira and what she was earning, we were able to do much more investments. It wasn't like, okay, the money is there and this is how I partition it and stuff like that. Oftentimes, you find out that before people get married, they don't have true and real conversations. What happens if you earn more? What happens if I lose my job? What happens if, so on-the-spot decisions are made, sometimes which are now colored with all other kind of situations and circumstances around. What's your background experience growing up? When we are dating, we need to have this conversation, but left to me, and in the experience of a lot of people, they will tell you that, look, who earns more doesn't matter if we are truly one. If it's not, your money is our money, my money is my money. If we're truly one, and everything we do is coming from what is best for our family, not being individualistic. But I need this position for my career. You're just being selfish. We say hurtful words when we don't have proper communications at the beginning to decide how we do it. But in terms of who earns more, it shouldn't matter. It's what we agree together to use with our money. So because I used to do projects, the idea is, okay, we eat your money, we invest my income. Did that happen? Yes. But you can imagine if we were eating her money and we were not investing my income. She's going to wisen up after a while. And when she said, you got promotion? Yes. Can you imagine? They even said there's no increase in the salary. Because she has to now think for herself. I think, did I answer you?
Yes, but you brought in another dimension, but I won't say anything for now.
For now. Thank you. Interesting. You want to have a go?
So I wanted to just loop on what Mr. Emmanuel had said to say that I think largely the example the question that just came in, like Mr. David had said also, that we have to understand a little more context. But where I'm going to is the fact that the lady still sees it as a me rather than an us. So she sees the career as hers, not the family's. And her husband doesn't see her career growth yet as the family's. So it has to be joint effort. It has to be a joint win rather than a singular win. I mean, in context, you can be investing your money and you're eating her money, but all the investments are in your name. Over time, when that cycle changes, she's going to get wise and realize you're investing, you're eating hers. So in context, what I'm saying is, we have to understand the background of what has happened before they got there, and why, in essence, does the husband in himself think that what should significantly be a rise for the family? He more or less sees it as only her rise. That's my own question, to say she has to then, which is my own feedback to her, to say she should begin to, and even the worst case scenario, she doesn't pick this rise, what's most likely going to happen is that they'll grow as a family unit, as a stronger family unit. If she takes the disposition of, now this is not me saying she shouldn't pick the rise, but where my focus would be, how does she ensure that whatever growth they have is unanimous, it's a family growth rather than an individual achievement.
Thank you. I'll come back to you, Mr. Akin, I promise. But for now, Mr. Emmanuel, in the past, women chose family-friendly careers. That's what I believe. Like when I was growing up, my mom, family-friendly careers. But now, like we've said and we've established, women's roles have evolved. So how important is a woman's choice of career in, her prospective suitor, for example, who approaches her, or do men look at things like that, like, oh, she's already in a managerial role now, do I want to step into that water? Does it matter, Yeah.
Thank you very much. Ideally, it should not matter. Nevertheless, you find out that we're talking about suitor. I was going to ask for the definition of suitor. All right? All right? But the circumstance of now, there's this French saying, plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. The more things change, the more they remain the same. It does not matter. It does not matter what the profession of the woman is. All right? It does not matter. But because of some hidden value system that's been carried on over the years, we continue to dance around the real thing. You don't want to say it outright, but the reality is that you just don't want a woman to say, I'm there, you are here. And the truth of the matter is this. From my own observation, the women of now, particularly in this country, they are trying their utmost to remember the values of their mothers and their grandmothers. So even if she's a manager, if she's a CEO, all right? she's still going to come home and nurture the children and nurture the man. Deal with are plenty. They go to work 5. Let me tell you what happened to me. When my children were getting married, and one of them came with his fiancée. And the second question was, and he said, right now, they were not living together, but I think he didn't expect that question. That right now, I'm already helping her. I work with her. I do everything around with her. And I said, if you do, that's fine, but I don't see how you're doing it now that you're not married. So if a woman has a career that's very excellent, or that's excellent, why should it be a burden to the man? Am I getting a yes in the house? Why should it be a burden to the man? Your suitor should not, if he's in love with you, I don't think it's anything so, it's not a hindrance. It's not a hindrance to be a senior manager somewhere, and then I like her, and I want her to be my companion. I don't think it should be an issue. I don't think it should be an issue. So whatever the case may be, if the woman is there and I like her, I think I'd probably just make a push for it. You wanted to ask something?
No, I didn't want to add anything, but what we're talking about is leading to another question I want Akin to address.
Okay.
Yes, talking about careers, because the question we asked Mr. Emmanuel was, does a woman's career determine the kind of, does a man consider that before approaching a lady? So Akin, I want you to answer this question. Now, because talking about career, these days, we have careers now that didn't exist 20, 30 years ago. And we hear a lot about brand, making yourself a brand, branding yourself, brand recognition, all those things. And we have a lot of women who are in careers that their name matters. So the question I want to ask you is, what is in a name? If a woman says that, oh, because of my career, because of the name I have built over the years, I cannot afford to just take my husband's name like that. People still need to be, I can give an example of Joke Silva. We all know who Joke Silva is, and she's married to Olu Jacobs, but everybody knows her as Joke Silva. So if a lady says, oh, I cannot take my husband's name because of my career, does it really matter? What is in a name? That's the question I'm asking you, Aki.
I think that there are two strings to it. The first string is, let's define the fact that, there's a lot in a name. We're in a church environment, and a name is what you're called. A name is your cause. It's the reason. It's your identity. So there's a lot in a name, but what is key is the fact that it's an identity. It's a brand. It's what defines you. And that's what leads me to the second string to say, what both partners have to first of all agree is what's the defined cause that they choose. So in essence, if the defined cause means that the wife's occupation or the wife's trade takes preeminence, then there's an understanding why in the first place she has to keep that name so that it can further that cause. I'll give you a simple example. I come from a family of five boys, and two of us have changed our names. The first one has a stage name that everybody calls him, but on his passport is the same name. But everybody never calls him that name on his passport. I've changed my name, and everybody doesn't call me what they used to call me before, because I had a different identity. So to my point is, there's the identity that we all go back because of your trade. Yes, we can identify with that. There's also the reason of, I have found a different cause, and I want to be identified by that cause. So in answering your question, it's both of them are understanding the cause that they have defined for themselves, and then deciding to what extent that would affect their personal lives, that would affect their names. As much as we say we are not contextual, we are very contextual in Africa. Our tradition still rides on a lot of things. It's difficult to come and say you're not taking your husband's name. It almost is threatened by the fact that you don't think we can achieve more on my on my side of the journey than your dad did. So yes, to a large extent, we can understand that. But all of that is because we are still seeing individuals rather than the couple as one. When we define a cause that drives both our lives, it's easier to have the discussion to say, okay, I want to keep this name. I mean, people have versions of keeping a name where you have a middle name before your husband's surname. So there are ways you can work around it. But if we both stand on an individual's position and we say, yes, I want to keep my father's name because it serves me more trade. I mean, we have, as much as we give Joke Silva a name, I understand that if she had gone with Joke Jacobs, who knows, she could have been even more famous for the fact that she changed the name. We don't know. I mean, it's a road we never travel. So we always leave that as the unknown. But to my point, it's the cause that should drive the identity that we give. So I think that's what should drive the discussion. That's what should drive how we decide on how we go about the change of name. But I mean, it's much more allowable now. So you have women with 3 names across their documents, and it works. Also, you also have to understand the context that your partner is coming from. So you have people that are very traditional. I've had a very traditional boss in the office who I called out across the hall. And because we're on first name basis, I thought it was cool. And then he called me outside and said, never shout my name like that. So I realized that while we call each other names, one first name, I still have to understand that there's context. So I would not shout his name across the hall again. So you have to understand the context as well of whoever is coming, who is your partner in the marriage.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Saki. Okay, so how do men feel about their wives choosing not to disclose their earnings, for example, investments? How do men feel about this? And I want Mr. Harold to start to take this question. It was sent in. How do men feel about that? How would you?
These are very tricky questions. I always default to personal experience. I personally would not ask my wife, but we never had that issue because when we got married, I was the one working. And before we got married, as a young man, you can organize yourself and look maybe slightly bigger than you really are, or slightly bigger than what your pocket is saying. It's just a way of, we used to call it fronting in those days, but but I remember that I told myself that, you know what, my wife had better know what it is that, and I had a few people, even, respect to my late father, but he actually told me that I shouldn't tell my wife, but he was exposed to a different kind of life, and he had his own reasons for that. But I looked at it and I said, the fear that some men have that, my wife should not know how much I'm earning. To me, I felt she should know because it takes a lot of pressure away from me. If you saw me and you look at me as somebody at this level, and I know deep down that I really don't have that kind of money, there'll be undue pressure anyway. So, look, before we got married, I just woke up one day, drove to her house, said, this is my pay slip, this is how much I'm earning. And at that point, I didn't even do it because I was expecting her to tell me hers. But we got married and I was very open, and the truth is, in fact, every single job she had, she would tell me, she would bring me, in fact, just like what you said, interestingly, even when the time I was out of work, my wife was working, I remember it was a bit difficult for me to comprehend how I kept telling myself, how am I going to ask her for money? But the first time she ever got paid when I was out of job, she brought all the money home and gave me, and she did it for virtually forever. She virtually gave me, just like you, virtually gave me how much I was earning. And one thing that we have to understand, which we should not either take for granted or commonize it, is that a woman will always follow your lead somehow, over time, somehow, that's experience now, As a husband, there's a way you would behave, really. And I'm not talking from experience now, but I realized that it was so much easier because it wasn't really just like what you said, you might not have known it, but you said that you didn't tell her anything, but she saw you, she saw who you were. And you know, who you are comes through. Before you marry, it doesn't, but over time, who you are comes through. And trust me, your wife will pick it. And so it was so, in fact, just like you, we never discussed anything. In fact, I can remember the first time in Nigeria that ATM cards came out. It took a certain time. She gave me her card. So in terms of, by the time a husband has to tell his wife that how much are you earning, to me, something is not right there. I mean, because to me, unless if both are, the only reason why you won't do that is if you feel either threatened or maybe something will go wrong, maybe he will ask you. But really, I mean, here on this, I'm sure the four of us are on the same side of the divide. You'd, if you've prepared your home well enough for things like that, it's just like children, you know. I keep telling people, how do you train up a child? And I tell them from my experience, my first child is 22. I have lived by example more than I've spoken to her. They will pick what you do long before they pick what you say. So your wife is watching. So, and you know, when we first started our counseling classes, we used to almost tell people what we do. But we realized that we shouldn't do that because people are different. My wife and I always told people this is who we were, but we realized that some women won't just do it, and you can't blame them, maybe from experience. You tell your husband how much you're earning, and suddenly he wants everything. You know, so it really depends on. It's individualistic to an extent, you know. But what I'll throw out there, I mean, I know this is not a men's conference, but really, to me, however a man wants his wife to behave, he should behave like that first. There's some things you don't even say. It's just standard. It will just come through. She will actually be looking forward to giving it. You know, it's trust. I mean, I've been married for 23 years. I know what I'm saying. My wife, sometimes she's so eager to want to do. I mean, and you know what? Because she's seen it. You do the same thing. And women are just born to react. Really. I keep telling people when they have problems, and half of the time, I mean, not all the time, half of the time when we're counseling, I always realize that once the men adjust a bit, the women just fall in. I don't know. It's just the way it is. That's from my personal experience. Thank you.
Thank you. So, in other words, model to her what
she wants. It might not happen immediately, but you know, but trust me, if it's sincere.
Over time. Yeah. Okay, Mr. David, do you want to add to that?
Actually, Harold said it all. There is no reason why you should still have a mentality of I can't tell you everything. One of the things I learned, and I'll probably say from God before I got married, is that marry a friend. Because I'm always surprised when people tell me, oh, I don't tell him or I don't tell her everything and I have somebody else. It's always an issue for me. And then, you know, a lot of this goes back to the foundation when you're dating. You know, they say love is blind, but marriage opens your eyes. So try and open your eyes during love. I remember something my wife said once, that the very first date or second date we went, and I sat down and I told her a lot of things about my life, that she went back home and said, I'm God, come. I know you said this is the guy, but I think we need to have a conversation. So I'm not sure whether she got any shockers or major shockers after we now said I do. I'm sure actually she did. Because no matter how much you've revealed, you still hide something away from you. But I think it's important to be that one unit to show it. But at times, experience teaches people. I've had experiences where people will tell you that, oh, every income it takes and says is investing in something. And then nothing comes out of it. Then the children suffer, or the landlord chases us, and stuff like that. So experience sometimes makes people think, you know what? At least he knows we're on 100,000 and he has a way of spending it. Now that we're on 180, let me make it 130, 50 for the sake of our family and sanity. Experience. So I love what Harold said. You don't dictate this is what you should do. Let me leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Emmanuel, sir, I want to go back to what you said when you were telling the story about your daughter bringing home her fiance, and you asked the guy when he comes back from home, what does he do? I'm sorry, when he comes back from the office, what does he do? So I'd like to talk about roles and responsibilities at home for men, because a lot of our conversation this evening, we've talked about the traditional man, and this is 2020. Women have evolved. We've gone from being housewives to running multi-billion naira corporations and still manning the home front. But when it comes to men helping out at home, is it a matter of they don't think it is necessary, they don't want to do it, they don't have the skills, or is it the way we ask them to do it? Should we ask, should we keep quiet? Because sometimes we feel this is not rocket science. Especially if I give you a scenario, maybe the two of you marry, the man says, oh, I don't want a third party in the house, I want us to do everything ourselves. It's good on paper, but when now comes to the practical reality, the woman is doing everything. We come back, So is it that the men don't see it is necessary? So how can we make men see? I have 4 men here, so please, I want you to speak to that, because a lot of women are actually suffering because of that issue.
Thank you, Remy. Personally, I don't have that experience. The experience of sitting down and letting my wife do whatever it is she has to do at home. I have always been very supportive of that. And I think men these days that think they went to work together, they got back home together probably, and then it's a time to throw the legs up, watch TV, while the woman goes in to change her clothes, to go into the kitchen. I think it has to do with who they are. It has to do with who they are. And also the environment of their upbringing. If the upbringing is short in those areas, the man is not going to come out of the blues at 30 to begin to do those things that he didn't see anyone do around him when he was 5, 6, 7, or 8. And if he has not experienced it growing up, that's his nature, that's his part. Now it becomes a burden for the woman. And how does the woman handle that? Thinking about it now, as I said, I haven't experienced it, but thinking about it, I would just say, well, you don't fight, you don't make too much noise, but there are so many ways that a woman is gifted. Do some pillow talk, all right? Do some pillow talk. And let her know that, look, this is getting very tiring. I come home after such a hectic day at work, and I still have to prepare our meal, get the children ready for bed, and all that and all that. And even if you have house helps don't give you the best. They can only support you. So if as a woman you are going through it, it is a painful consideration for me, because I have girls, and my siblings are mostly girls. And this informed my opinions about how I would deal with my wife when I was growing up. I cannot understand, that's the truth of the matter, why some young man will come in from work, and the wife comes in from work, and he goes to sit down. Even if you're not the one going to do the cooking. You know what I still do? When my wife is in the kitchen, I walk up to her, I hug her, I pat her on the backside, say, you're doing good, girl. All right, even now, I still do it. She's the one cooking. But I don't like to sit down when she's there in the kitchen. If I'm doing something else, I will do that and quickly just walk in and give some sweet words. All right? We're going to eat together. We're going to do all these things. The children growing up well, it's to our benefit. So I think the men should come to understand that it is a joint responsibility. Bernard Shaw said something. He said, parenting is a very important profession. Profession. Parenting is a profession. And now to paraphrase him, he said, the exams to determine who is qualified are never taken. And we impose our standards, and we impose all these things that happen on the children, in whose interest we came together in the first instance. That's the paraphrase. It's not as long as that.
Can I add two points to that? I spoke of a foundation earlier, and I'll go to that again. It's a women's conference, so to the sisters. While dating, watching, my wife grew up with boys, cousins, sibling, and everything. And I remember something distinctively. She was working in Accenture, then probably number 2 globally. And she came home one day. I was waiting for her. She came. She was so tired. And she asked the maid in the house, what are they eating? She said, I think the guys had finished the food. I actually made amala for her in the house. If you don't observe what it does, don't be surprised what happens when you get married. The example you gave, when a guy says, I don't want us to have a maid, we did the same thing. Ask him. She didn't have a problem with me, and you can ask her. But ask him, okay, so how are we dividing these chores? Don't say, okay, fine. Because if in his mind it's like, when I married you, they promised me a wife, a maid, a cook. You need to clarify that. And when you clarify it, as much as possible, no cause for fight, no nothing. If I cook and you wash plates, I won't wash the plate. Tomorrow, the food will be ready and cooked. I will not eat it. Now, the plates of yesterday are still in the sink. Babes, let me stand with you while you wash. People need to observe. I love the saying, I think it was, is it Maya Angelou? Something, anyway, I got it from my wife. And she said, believe people when they show you who they are, irrespective of what they say. Believe them when they show you who they are.
Let me say something.
Okay, so we have 2 minutes to wrap this up. Yes.
Okay. Can I just say something? Okay. Can I just say something here? Now, we are on those, right? We love pounded yam. All right? And anytime we ate pounded yam, I pounded. All right? My son saw me do it. Exactly. He pounds. All right? Children learn by what they see, just as much as what they do, you teach them. They observe you, and they appropriate every trait that you are manifesting for them. So it's very important for the man to do things that are supportive of the woman in relevance to your question.
Thank you very much, sir. So we only have one more minute.
Yes, so we have 1 minute.
Can we take one final question? And I want Aki to be the one to answer this, because you were the last person to leave the dating pool. How will a woman know she's being pursued by someone who is sincere? And I'm talking in the context of what is happening today. Because dating has evolved. The way Mr. Emmanuel met his wife, I'm sure is not the same way you met yours. So in these days of everything is online now, and the way guys are behaving, sorry to generalize, how will a woman know she's being pursued by someone who is sincere?
Thank you for letting me answer that question.
And she has dropped the question, but you have about 30 seconds.
Okay, so in a nutshell, I think, like you said, dating is different now. I think to a large extent, while you're dating, there are pointers that would always show you whether or not the kind of person that you're dating, as it were. But what I think is most important is for you to first identify yourself. In understanding what you are, who you are, there are things that you would see that you would decide not to go ahead with. There would be things as simple as how it treats the security man. They are very simple things, but it will only be a trigger when you have first identified yourself or defined yourself in total. So I would not put the pressure on the woman trying to find the person. I'll put the pressure on her trying to define herself. Because as much as it is, like Mr. Harold had said, packaging is easy now. With a very good Instagram page, you can package well. You can take pictures with the right people. But in relation, in going out, in being with the person, it's simple things like the person that splashes water on you, Those things, and you would only identify as much as you have defined yourself. So if you do not define first yourself, then you would probably be picking up the wrong pointers. So my challenge would be define yourself properly. Define yourself such that you would be able to pick up as much as is spiritual. You would pray, you would fellowship with God, you would have mentors, people that would probably direct you. It's the whole yards, but I would rather put the pressure on the lady trying to define herself, understand what is a no-no, and then working from that known to what the pointers are speaking. I mean, your environment will speak to you. It's easier to be fooled these days.
Okay, thank you very much.
30 seconds,
Thank
right?
you. You tried. Thank you very much. It has got to be a wrap. And believe me, you have given us more than enough to chew on. We want to thank you. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Another round of applause for our wonderful panelists. I'm sure you have broken some tables. Thank you so much for those insightful responses and for the powerful questions too from our moderators. Thank you so much. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us all the way. It's been a wonderful day so far. I mean, today has been special on so many levels. I don't know if I'll go as far as saying 19 is my lucky number, but 19 is a special number for me. I was born on the 19th. My husband was born on the 19th. We got married on the 19th. And across our families, we have so many birthdays and anniversaries. But there was nothing on September 19th. And immediately I knew this conference was going to be on September 19th. I asked for something new to be born in my life. And I hope that you also were that deliberate or even more deliberate about asking God for a specific thing, as Pastor Mrs. Kojimade talked about in our prayer session, to be very deliberate about the encounter you want to receive with God and the area you want to evolve in. And I'm very sure that as we made those demands on God, as we just walked in and said, you know, this is actually something powerful, that we learned something, and we also received that impetus and that fire to go from one stage of our lives to another. On that note, I would like to say a big thank you to all of our keynote speakers, our speakers at the breakout sessions, and of course, our men who were on the men's panel a few moments ago. And to you, our golden audience, what would our event be if no one was listening? Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention, and thank you to every child and everybody in your environment who has stayed put for you to concentrate on the program today. We thank you and we say, God bless you and continue to evolve.
you.